Cross-sell and bundles. Okay, not that much different from all the other stuff we saw. We have the natural bundle that we talked at length about storage points, so I'm not going to repeat that. It's a very good fit. The two integrate well together, and there's a maximum benefit for the customer, maximum value that you can describe in that bundle. We also have with control point, now backup and control point is actually leading with 11% of our backup deals, followed by content matrix at 8%. Those are good places when you are selling these other points to be able to include backup. But, cautionary note here, you have to be aware of the environment. You have to understand through a lot of dialogue with these customers before you start adding in things, because there are potentials for gotchas. A good example, and I'm going to turn it over to Andy for a quick moment on this. There was a deal where backup got added in that all of a sudden expanded the competitor pool to include Symantec, which would not have been the case otherwise. So, and because that happened, then all of a sudden, all the work that we were putting into the deal to position it the way we wanted to got pulled out. It was a very interesting thing. So it gets back to the basic qualifying and understanding the dialogue and being able to have a rapport where you can ask questions so you know when all of a sudden you're going to introduce an external variable that you weren't expecting.
Right, and it comes down to digging for money, digging for value for the customer, and then asking whether they can give you money for it, right? It's pretty simple. Like control point, I mean, how often do you hear about distributed management with control point, right? They have a bunch of power users, and that's why control point fits in well with it, right? Well, doesn't our backup? Because now you have the end user level distributed, individual restore, right? So it goes well together. What Paul was talking about, bringing backup in and not understanding the full scope of the deal is pretty straightforward. We were looking at control point and content matrix, and when we added backup, we actually took some of the high-level terminology like governance and administration and sort of that backfilled into Symantec's archive, because Symantec's known very well for backup. So when we just threw backup out there and we didn't have a game plan to how to go after it and what value we were going to offer, and we weren't digging for value, we were just digging, we kind of actually exposed ourselves and we lost a deal, and it's purely because we weren't digging for value and asking for money for it. We were just digging in general, and we kind of uncovered something for someone else. So we shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. So like I say, the key thing to think about here is when you go to position, I mean, it's like this with any product. What is the benefit to the end user? It's not about a feature, it's not about this. It is, and they're adding great features to these products, right? But features are useless to certain people, right? I mean, what if they don't want their end users to have access to an item level recovery, right? That's probably a deal breaker unless there's some way we can turn it off. I don't imagine that ever being the case, but it's something you want to ask. If I can give you this, will you pay for it? And if the answer is like, that would be amazing, but there's no way we're going to pay for it because it just doesn't make sense. That's kind of where it goes. And when you're hinging with another product, how does it fit in? Well, storage point, the question is going to arise, how do I back up this storage point product, right? So it's almost a given that those two go hand in hand, and they also accelerate and complement each other. Control point, like I said, a quick one off the top of my head is if you have distributed management, this kind of adds to it, right? Now you have distributed recovery, But that's what you got to be doing, is digging and seeing how the pieces fit together for the customer themselves and their company, and if they have money there to actually execute on.
So this is the other one that I think is really important. We've sold a lot of storage point. To get maximum value out of storage point and make it fully integrated, this should be the easiest no-brainer. So when you have a little bit of time, have a list of all of the customers in your territory that own storage point, and go in and start looking to sell this. Because remember, I'm going to throw up here, the average selling price has moved above 10K. It's a relatively easy upsell type of item, and it's a natural synergistic thing. So especially you get to year-end opportunities where maybe they have some discretionary dollars, go sell them this, okay? You can take some orders on that. They already have made an investment in MetaLogic, so they're already seeing huge value from that. This is just going to simplify their lives in many cases, and now that they can layer on top of any other backup tool that they already have so it doesn't disrupt, and you don't worry about like the saboteur coming into play, that's a good and easy one.
You got a question?
I was going to ask a question about the storage point kind of retroactive bundle that you were saying. Are we doing that bundle pricing for backup customers that already own storage point, and you, let's say 6 months later, you're diving back into your customer list and you're saying that might be a good option there, and you're introducing backup to them? Is that a value proposition we're doing, or?
We don't have a defined bundle around that, but I know that the RVPs have been given a lot of latitude in saying, look, find a way to bring this in, because these are good, easy things to sell and promote. It's not one where we need to give up the farm, per se, to get them to buy it, because it's one of these where it's like, okay, you've made a value-based decision around storage point, and this extends that value prop. It can be one of those things where you can come up with some creative ways of, okay, try it in conjunction with storage point, see how seamlessly it works, and see if you can result in a deal. The key thing there is, if uncover, can they come up with a way of creating budget for this from somewhere? And usually there's going to be several different ways to do that. And it gets back to the whole thing. If they started using storage point, they probably now have a relationship that can go over there and talk to that network or the storage or the DBA type of person and say, hey, look, we have something that makes it even easier on you. I'm not going to come to you as often, and for a small amount, do you have some money that I could work on this? And so there's a couple of pools you might be able to tap into. Early stage objection handling. So I'm going to go back, and I'm not sure who I'm going to ask specific ones. We're going to keep these pretty quick. I already use an out-of-the-box solution for SharePoint, and it seems to be working just fine. So, Steve, how would you approach that?
Obviously, right, we now know that we integrate with out-of-the-box solutions, so the answer should be thank God, that's great. But which one do you use? And do you use SharePoint? So if you use SharePoint, there's a lot of limitations like I showed you. 3 different jobs, no UI, no monitoring, no alerting. It's not enterprise ready. It's just out of the box. It's just there. And you can't recover. The most common request, you can't even recover an item. So what are you doing with it? Well, you can import it to us, and you can do anything with it. You can recover a whole database down to an item. SQL means they only care about content. SQL does not know about anything else. They're taking SQL backups. They just care about lists, they just care about items and documents. There is nothing else that they care about because SQL doesn't back up anything else, just content databases. So they're leaving everything else, like all those other checkboxes that I was showing you on the backup tool, IIS, GAC, all the other components that make SharePoint work and function, they're not backing up, they're not protecting. So they are really, there's a huge hole in what they're actually able to protect. But again, the good news is they can use our product to restore down to the item level. The alternative, if something goes wrong, imagine Steve Murphy loses a document and I have to go and recover that document, and I only have a database backed up with it. Well, I'm going to actually take that database and push it back in. I'm going to replace an entire database just for one document. That's what he's doing with his SQL backups today. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's like doing, for one document, a whole replacement of everything. You've lost more data than you actually gained just because somebody wanted one document back. With ours, in 2 seconds, they can import it and bring just that one document right back, without even knowing where it was. You can do an in-place restore and bring it back to where Steve needs it.
Usually with that one, they've got to stand up a whole separate farm, bring that back up, and then go grab that one document and bring it back to the production side.
So right, SQL requires you to do what's called stage your database somewhere else. You have to have a whole other SQL server, mount it.
Right, and to put that into perspective, I mean, if you think about this from a time lapse, you're literally talking about somebody could call you when they got the request from Steve Murphy to get that document back, buy our product, install it, and do the recovery faster by far than, I mean, obviously we'd have to rush them a key, right? But from the time that they got the key, including calling you, getting the quote, and everything, it would still be faster than what they're doing now. Right, so if you have an impatient CEO, which I wouldn't say that Steve is, I wouldn't say anything bad about them. But, you know, some CEOs are kind of like tyrants, and they're not going to put up with that, right? So if anybody's, when you call, you're looking for these types of situations to say, hey, is there some value there for you guys? I mean, you know, and who's the value proposition to? If you tell your CEO, hey, listen, I need you to sign this quote because if you do, then I can get you whatever you want within 10 minutes, let's say, rather than, remember last time and you wanted to kill everybody and you're running around screaming at everybody because we don't know what we're doing, and you know what I mean? So it's an easy sale.
Yeah.
The thing that I would say about these is there's a key piece missing from this, right? You start with an objection. The objection has to be correlated to who you're talking to, right? So if somebody says, I use out-of-the-box SharePoint backup tools and it seems to work just fine, really the line of questioning needs to be, so you guys don't care whether you have to recover SharePoint or not? Because if it's working just fine, I mean, that's kind of a really low standard, right? Then what's your RTO? Is it 40 hours, or how big is your SharePoint farm, right? But you get into a little bit of digging questions on why that does or is not actually fine. So it's blocking and tackling, like we keep hearing about this, but what that means is you get an objection. Is it a real objection, or is it a blocking objection? Is it somebody just giving you the Heisman saying, no, we haven't, it's fine, I hate talking to salespeople and I don't want to buy anything, no thanks, right? Well, you have to dig past that. That's why you have to go in hot. You have to go in aggressive. You can't take no for an answer, because that's what everybody's going to give you right from the break. We're fine, leave me alone, I don't want to buy anything, right? So you got to go in there and you got to dig for some value. And so you go through a line of questioning. If you want to do the actual comparison of the two, it's relative to who you're talking to. If they don't care how long it takes them to get it back, it's not a deal, right? So there is no response. The response is, you guys don't care whether you can get this back or not? Probably not interested in this product. Have a great day.
Everybody can take a backup.
Right.
Well,
It's easy.
and there's a matter of perception here too. Remember who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a SharePoint admin, they're not completely technical. Okay. How many people have a smartphone? Nowadays, pretty much everybody. Go back 5, 6, 8 years, whatever it was. We all had phones too. They were these little flip phones, and you know, you could make calls. I didn't know I was missing anything by not having a smartphone, because I just didn't know that it was a potential. So a lot of these, it works just fine for me, or I'm already using something. To Steve's point, that's great, but did you know as an admin that backup can be about so much more value-added capabilities than you currently get? Do you have these other pain points that you really just don't associate with backup? Ah, okay. Now that their eyes are open a little bit to be able to say, so you can get all of this within a single tool rather than what you're looking at over here. So all of a sudden you've shifted the playing field a little bit, and they're more knowledgeable. This is in that early education phase, but for many of the people, if something is good enough, that usually means that they don't really understand the scope of what's possible or potential with these kind of products.
And in a lot of times, they don't care, right? Because the SharePoint admin's the SharePoint admin. The IT director said it's fine, that's why he thinks it's fine. So a lot of times you might be talking to the wrong person. Call the IT director. You're trying to tell me that you guys don't care because your admin just told me it takes you guys 8 hours to recover a document, and you have to move data around and everything else. You guys are cool with that? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And if you are, is it, to his point, is it because you didn't know that there was a better way that you could be doing this? Because I was trying to show him how you could do this in minutes. Like just from SQL backup, whatever, just boom.
Isn't that our slogan?
Is there any value there? Right? It's constantly going and finding who in the business understands the business value, and can they give us some money for that business value? That's what it comes down to.
I want to just spend a moment before we move on this last one here, because there's a couple of hidden traps here. So if they're using AvePoint,
Good notes, Murray.
okay, there's a couple of ways that this could go down. First of all, how many AvePoint products do you have installed? If they have a whole bunch, it's a platform. Rip and replace means ripping and replacing a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, ask them, do you love AvePoint? Or do you hate AvePoint? Okay? Unless they say, I hate AvePoint, you're probably not going to get them off of this. Okay? Just be aware there's lower hanging fruit. Not saying don't go after it, but I'm saying be very aware of what you're up against on that. Okay? Ask qualifying questions to figure out, is this even a potential? Don't assume that because they're using AvePoint that they have this knee-jerk reaction that, hey, they're not going to like it. They may be very content, or they may not like it, but they have other products that they're very content with, and the pain of separation is just not worth it to them. Okay? So it is an objection. It's a very real objection, but find out a little bit more before you go down one of the two paths of saying probable, unlikely.
And a good thing there is, do you take, so the qualifying questions that he talked about, but we didn't give any specifics. Specifics are, is your DB also taking SQL backups? Because if you are, then you're not relying on that thing. You can smash it out of there, and guess what? You could just delete those backups. You don't need them anymore, because if your DBA has already got these, you've got the content over here, and we can actually use that. So you can save some space there, right? You're digging for value, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's going to work every time. But at the end of the day, those are the qualifying questions is, can we make this a fit? And if we do, is it going to create some value where your company will fork over some money?